Hi, I'm David Charlton, and this is the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast. 5 minutes for a series of 6 episodes on a Tuesday for those interested in football or soccer, and in this case, specifically for coaches and parents. Hi there. Last week I shared some ideas for parents to be able to support their children should they not be enjoying their football or potentially thinking about quitting football. And I'm going to follow on with this today. In some cases, the reason why young people might not be having so much fun or enjoying their football could actually link to their self-esteem and their overall sense of self-worth. And this can be evident for children and for adults. It's very easy to place so much emphasis on your football as a young person when you play virtually every day, and especially when things aren't going particularly well for you, when you're out of form, or when your team isn't doing very well, or maybe there's some issues around your team. A person's identity can get wrapped around their football, hence the reason why I'm going to talk about self-esteem today. I'm going to talk about low self-esteem, different signs of struggles, and I'm also going to share some ideas that you can implement to help a young person's self-esteem. So let's start with high self-esteem. What actually is high self-esteem? Well, it's when we feel good about who we are most of the time. When we've got belief in our skills and our abilities and our strengths, and we feel like we're deserving. We have a sense of control over our destiny and our life. In mental toughness terms, it's having a can-do attitude. So when things do happen to us, we do feel like we've actually created it. We also feel connected and loved, and we've got some good, solid friendships. The reality is, though, having good or positive or high self-esteem isn't always about feeling good and feeling happy all of the time. That's just not possible. It's life. We all have bad days when we wake up the wrong side of the bed. We have quarrels, arguments, different things happen in our lives, and we might have more negative thoughts on some days than others. However, what actually highlights low self-esteem would be when a young person gets into comparing themselves an awful lot in a negative way with other people. And this can definitely overlap with football, especially when it's a team sport. You know, young people have got teammates, they've got opponents, and sometimes in well-meaning ways, parents can talk more about teammates or opponents, or even siblings, than the person themselves. And coaches can do this too, especially the parent who is a coach. So the actual environment here can cause a bit of a problem for the young person. Some coaches can get very transfixed on opponents and the messages that they give. And I haven't even mentioned social media and what that does at times. Other examples of low self-esteem would be just being cautious about actually doing things. So having a can-do attitude, not giving things a go, putting up a barrier. And then you've got the put-downs, the labels that people place on themselves, such as I'm rubbish, there's no chance I can do that. And yes, this can be in a football sense, but it can also travel across into life in general. And it is very important in this case not to just get transfixed with football. We should be thinking about self-esteem in a wider context. We've also got this negative inner voice too. We all have it. It's human nature. But if you lack self-esteem, that's going to be more telling. The young person with low self-esteem, who's made a mistake, who's failed a test, who hasn't done very well in a game of football, well, they're going to be very, very, very hard on themselves. And then the last one I would say would be that there'll be a lot of doubt in a young person's head about whether they actually belong or whether they're valued, whether they should be there and whether people are actually listening to them. This can be a big, big issue in their minds. So when we think about some of the causes, naturally a young person, well, they're trying to find themselves, their identity. They're perhaps going through changes in their lives, starting new schools or colleges, joining new clubs, starting new activities. In football, they might be playing up a year, they might be signing scholarships. Various different things can go on there. And then, if we think about life in general, parents' jobs might take them to new areas or new countries. They might have relationship difficulties at school, there might be bullying, there might be things going on in the background in their family, or perhaps bereavements. And you know, when we think about the messages young people hear from others, yeah, they've got their parents, they've got their friends, teachers, siblings, you've got the joys of social media, and then in the football environment. They've got their teammates, their opponents, their coaches. If there's an awful lot of negativity, it really can be draining for some people. Labels, well, labels can cause a big issue too. Things like they're shy, they're quiet, they're clumsy, they're weak, they're slow. Put-downs really aren't helpful. These can damage self-esteem. And as we know, kids can be cruel with this, and they can hear an awful lot of negative and nasty stuff from their friends. Then when we think about mistakes, around the house, maybe they spill a glass of juice on the carpet, or the young person makes a mistake at school, at college, or in football. So the way that they're then talked to, if they're put down, if they're criticised, if there's an overreaction, it's not going to help them. And I've touched on this one a number of times recently on the podcast and on other platforms, where when there's a focus on achievement, or too big a focus on achievement, when conversations link to outcomes, this can add pressure. Lots of pressure for some people, where they feel like they're only going to be noticed if they actually achieve something. This needs to be factored in too when it comes down to self-esteem. Obviously, we've got social media and the perfect picture, or the pictures of the perfect world that people portray in their lives. This has an impact. And then the last one I'm going to throw into the mix here is the struggles that people have in their lives, or in their sport, in their football, in their education, and negativity around that. Harsh words, and how this impacts on self-esteem and upsets certain people. So how do we build a young person's sense of self-esteem? How do you make them feel better in themselves? Well, this links to a sense of can-do, and in mental toughness terms, life control. So I'm going to give one tip here, and really this is all to do with helping a young person find themselves. So taking a step back as a parent and considering their strengths, their qualities as a person, and then trying to help them bring those strengths and those qualities out so that they walk around with a smile on their face more often, enjoying their lives, living with a purpose. That's going to improve their self-esteem. And that might mean 4 or 5 days a week of football maybe has to change to 1 or 2 so that they have more or less social or fun things in their diary for a period. Sport or football can get really serious at such a young age, and sometimes this can actually be to the detriment of some young people. It can help some people too. There are certainly positives as well. But in some cases, it might well be that actually combining another activity with their football really does bring out the strengths of a person out. It helps them to mix with different groups of people. These suggestions may help young people develop a more positive opinion of themselves. By trying out new activities, it might even actually go on to benefit their football too in the long run. I know I've spoken to a number of coaches who talk about when kids simply just get involved in one sport, physically they can become quite robotic in the way that they move. So by trying out other activities and having some fun with other activities, it might just help them develop more emotionally and physically and help them discover themselves. And on this topic, it's also very important to consider where they get a sense of belonging from, where they're very comfortable around other people. So how do we bring that out, that sense of belonging in younger people? How can they meet new people and develop a positive opinion of themselves too? I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope it's made you consider the bigger picture and recognise that it can actually be quite complex. Simply enjoying their football or the sports, it can be linked to wider issues too. So for more on this topic, and on other topics to help young footballers, or the older footballer for that matter, parents and coaches, please do sign up to the X Factor. It's a regular newsletter which I email out every couple of weeks. Until next week, and the final part of this 3-part series for parents, please do enjoy the Easter break if you're taking some time off.